Hey there, I'm Mike Bal. I did a presentation this week for the beta startup accelerator cohort up in Minneapolis that just kicked off. So it was a new group, and I just wanted to record this so that it's up online and available for whoever finds it. I called it Solving the Right Problem, the key to winning product market fit. We actually we don't talk about solving the right problem that much in here because it's really about solving the right problem / choosing the right path that presents the most value to the right customer and understanding who that customer is at a deeper level. So I opened it up with a game we can skip through. Instagram started as Bourbon, which was location-based social network. They saw that users were interested in the photos specifically, so they pivoted. PayPal actually started as this company called Confrontity that was focused on money exchange still, but through Palm Pilots, which became obsolete pretty quickly. And Groupon actually started as The Point, which was more fundraising focused initially versus sales focused. Made a pretty big pivot once people were showing interest in some of the discounts and deals with vendors that they were finding. We'll move on. I'm going to try to do this pretty quickly. It's an abbreviated version. So product market fit is generally, you have it when you're seeing customers come in, they're purchasing the product, they're using the product frequently and activating on the features that you have in there, and then you're able to retain a decent amount of them. That means your marketing was effective at bringing people in and your product was effective at solving the problems for them, right? So you didn't just convince them that they needed to do this new thing and that it's worth doing, and then they did it once and forgot about it. You actually added some level of value to their lives that they continue to associate value to and continue to pay for it as a result of that. Ideally, when you're looking at it in the weeds on the product side, you're looking at them continuing to use it on a regular basis, and they're renewing and purchasing, like I said. Finding product market fit is not as easy as see a need, fill a need, which is from a movie called Robots, and they were talking about inventing. There's a lot of different things that factor into it that make it a little bit harder. Like if you're realistic about your market size, and people cite total addressable market, but they don't actually mean total addressable market. That's just the biggest number they can find that they think is going to be interested in their product. When you actually cut out the fat and eliminate the people who won't find the product interesting, or think about how often your product is relevant to those people, that number becomes smaller. So they go in a little too optimistic, and they struggle when none of the numbers are where they think they would be. Trajectory of that market matters too. And was that automatic? The audience we had always talked about bringing in, what that platform was known for, I was at WordPress.com, was bloggers and first-time website builders. Now bloggers have become creators. They do podcasting, they do videos. They're not just bloggers anymore. First-time website builders are now kids in school. So the audience we're going after is not who it was when we started and who we thought our customers were. And if we continue to pursue that market, we're going to be seeing shrinking audiences, basically. And we're missing out on all these other audiences that have since branched out of those groups, right? People aren't usually super great at understanding how they relate to the competitors, depending on where they're at. New startups are better at this than businesses that have been in this space for a while. But it's easy to forget, not just what your competitors have or how you relate to them, but what are they really good at and where are they beating you, and where is it hard to compete versus where is it easier to compete for you, and optimizing your efforts based on that. And then a lot of companies also, they spend too much on their product and they increase price as a result, and they hit a point where it's the value they put into it, they invested into it, isn't the same as the outcome and what the customers are willing to pay. If you ever have owned a house or worked on something and improved it and tried to make it better or renovate it or whatever, and then tried to turn around and sell it, there's certain things that don't add the level of resale value that you would expect to based on what you did. Maybe you picked the most expensive flooring that you thought was fantastic, and the people looking to buy it didn't really like the flooring that much. So despite the fact that it's brand new, they're not interested in paying extra because they're new floors, because they're thinking about the money they'd have to spend to get it to be the way they want. So as a business, when you're thinking about these things, it's important to be brutally honest. This is kind of out of everything that I've told anybody or everybody that I've worked with, this is a thing that tends to be fairly unique to me, where I say, I want to be optimistic about our product, but I also would rather be brutally honest about it so that we challenge ourselves to do better and address the pain points ahead of time. It's what does the customer think the product is worth? Even if they paid for it a little bit, what's in the back of their head? Like, is it, oh, if Netflix raises it $1 more again, I'm done with Netflix. I'm perfectly happy switching to Prime or something else. Or is it, yeah, I'm getting a hell of a deal on this, and they could charge me $25 a month or $100 a month or $1,000 a month more, and I'd still be happy with what I'm getting. Like, you really need to understand where your customers kind of perceive the value of the product. In the competitive market, if you don't have an advantage and you're relying entirely on your price positioning and minor differentiators that aren't really tangible to most of your users, you're set up to lose. You have to have some kind of value and position that's scalable, and it has to matter to your customers. Within the existing market, are you doing anything new? Are you doing something that's a big differentiator? Are you doing a small differentiator, right? Are there related products that are in parallel markets that do the same thing well? Are there bigger products that cover your specific market as one piece of their functionality? You really have to understand what that landscape looks like to know how you price, because I've seen companies that are very focused on one thing try to charge the same as a platform that has that one thing comprehensively built into it, and 10 other things. That doesn't work. And then obviously, if you're really good, and most startups don't get to this point early on, but if there's a high level of value associated with your brand, you can charge more just based on your name being on it, based on the expectations that people have for it. If you ever fall short of that, that's a whole different story, but it's worth considering. So the things that impact like the customer's perceived value in these cases, these are my top 3 that I see 90% of the time when I'm working on stuff. There's monetary, which is pricing. It's pretty obvious. There's time and energy saved. Essentially, if I use this product, do I have more time or do I have more energy or whatever left to go do the things I want to do? And then there's cognitive load of how you feel at the end of the day or how you feel after you use the product to do the thing. Does it make doing my reporting easier so that I'm not in brain melt mode when I'm done with it? Does it make communicating easier so that I'm not using all of my energy just communicating what's happening and not actually getting anything done? There are products that do these things really well, and they can charge a premium because they do save people time, energy, brain power, and money. There's also other things, especially in the B2C space, not B2B space, but you look at like social currency. Does it make me look cool? Does it make me look more interesting? Does it give me something to talk about at parties or in groups or whatever? The upscale pieces, does it make me better at the things that I do or better at something I want to be able to do? Does it give me the power to do something new? Novelty is something that people will spend money on. There's a huge market just for nostalgia right now. If you look at my generation specifically, let's say kids that grew up in the 80s and 90s, people have disposable income and they're coming out with retro things like, I'm trying to think, Gushers, Super Soakers, the throwback Nerf guns, throwback clothing, like all this stuff that was cool at the time, and people just have fond memories of it, so they're spending money on it again and bringing it back. And then comfort's always something that people are willing to pay more for. Think about first class or business class or economy plus or all the different things that they have now. I asked the group what some others are. You can think about that and comment. So once you get to the value part and understand where the true value comes from your product, what you can stand behind and stand up on and say, our product is valuable because of these things, it definitely does these things. We know it does these things. People experience this value. They communicate it to us this way. Like, customers perceive it this way, and it is valuable to them. The other half is like, which customers? Because there's lots of businesses that struggle because they went after the wrong customers and they overgeneralize, or they get too specific. One of the things that I've seen is personas can be super limiting. If you build out an entire life for somebody and all your campaigns and all your efforts and all your messaging are focused on communicating your message to that one person, you're alienating people that could still find it relevant and assuming that your research and what you did was enough to really understand all the different contexts. And people may discover it otherwise and find that it's useful, but if you're basically telling them it's not for them, they may not. So I like to think about experiences and relevancy based on time and what's happening now versus everything else in that person's life, because it's too much information to really matter. That's the situational relevance part. If it's hot out and I've been out hiking all day, I'm very likely to stop, especially if I drink all my water, at a gas station or whatever on the way out of town, or an ice cream shop or whatever, and pick up a treat with my family or whatever. I just said that 3 times, but we'll continue on. So sometimes it's right time, right place. Sometimes it's something's happening in the world and people are interested in X. Sometimes it's, oh, I got to this milestone in my career and I need to buy a custom suit for something. Maybe it's an executive meetup or whatever. First time I'm going to spend big dollars on a suit, and it can't be a cheap one that I get from the mall or whatever, right? And then this other piece, not necessarily related, but another anecdote is you should be able to get some early signals, even from small customer bases, on whether or not what you're doing is working and whether or not there's value in it. And the signals might not always be obviously positive. Maybe it's negative and in the form of customer support requests. But if you dig into those conversations and figure out that, hey, they're trying to use this, they're interested in it, but it didn't work the way they expected it to do, or didn't do what they wanted it to do, you find a gap that you can solve quickly. There's other signals like usage or shifting usage from one area of the product to another, or drop-offs entirely. Like maybe they tried a new experience that you shipped and they haven't been back in the product for a week or two. Those are things you have to pay attention to, and that may not materialize in revenue instantly, but that can make a huge difference in terms of how you operate and prioritize your time, because sometimes it's too late for you to go back and fix it if you miss those early signals. So finding the right customers is the piece that I think I mentioned earlier, where I don't over-index on personas. I do index on relevancy. And the way to find out why it was relevant, why it was valuable, why they chose your product over other products, or why they chose something else, is to talk to people. I won't work with an organization, a team, or whatever that doesn't talk to the customers who use the product. It doesn't make any sense. I refuse to do it. It's something that has to happen. I'd prefer if they even spend some time going beyond just a light conversation and digging into like what they're doing in their time. Like if they are building a business, if they're trying to run a nonprofit business, or if they're trying to launch some kind of event or whatever, like what are they struggling with outside of the process of doing that? If your product is one piece of that, what are all the other pieces that they have to deal with? What does that full experience look like for them? That gives you the empathy and understand the other things that are on their mind so you can make your product better. It also gives you ideas of how your product can solve more problems that maybe you didn't know they had. When I say don't get specific on the persona piece, I don't mean in terms of the messaging and the value. When it comes to connecting the product value to the actual customers who are buying it, be as specific as you possibly can. So I found this product incredibly useful when I had a newborn at home because I was low on sleep. I had limited time, I was interrupted frequently, and this let me worry less about accuracy and attention to detail, and it captured, all of my notes, and it summarized what was happening, and it gave me summaries of different conversations that were happening. Maybe it's AI, maybe it's Slack's new AI functionality that's going to summarize threads or something like that, or maybe it's Loom that gives you a transcript and gives you content that you can then repurpose pretty easily. That's what's on my mind right now, so I'm using AI, but I also have a baby at home, so those things are all relevant and real. And then the only real way to make sure you're right is to test and validate. So some of these things are messaging things, and you can figure out how well you can target to them and identify people who are in those moments, and how well that messaging and that relevance or that connection works for them. From a long time ago, I know that from a copywriting standpoint, one of the most effective ways to improve performance on a page is to actually use words from the customer's mouth. It's the same thing here. If you're using that in your messaging and it's resonating and you're seeing engagement, you're seeing click-throughs, you're seeing conversions, and they're actually the right people, they're staying in the product and they're activating on it, you know you're on the right track. If you don't, you see the opposite. Maybe you got some mixed signals, or maybe you gathered some information in too much of a leading way and didn't hear the right piece. But that doesn't mean you toss it. Maybe you go back to those conversations and pick out different pieces of it or dive a little bit deeper. So at the end of the day, this is what it starts to look like when you have all these things pieced together, right? You start with value in your product that you're confident in. You know how it stands up against the competition. You found an audience is willing to pay for it, and they continue to use it. It resonates with them. They're actively using it. They're renewing on it. If you get lucky enough, they may even be sharing it with other people and bringing you new customers. And what we did for this was workshop and have the different startups go through and start working on this story of how each customer segment they have that finds their product useful or relevant actually meets the product in practice when it's most relevant. Not just in general, they found it, they heard about it in an article when we were marketing it or whatever, but they had a need and it was incredibly relevant and they found it, and how did they do that and what was that like for them? So that's what this team is working on. So that was this presentation. I did it in 15, which is good. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Feel free to follow up the website. I have other content and stuff like that.